You heard a little bit about my resume. Some would say, gee, Rick can't keep a job because I've done lots of things. But I've had a wonderful career throughout my life and many more years to go in my career. But I thought it worthwhile to give you a little bit more of what's behind Rick Stevens, to give you some sense and perspective that I understand where you're sitting. I understand some of the challenges you face and some of the great wealth of opportunity you face. One of the great mentors that I had early on in my life, and I think it's important for all of us to have mentors as we go through our lives, because it gives us a sounding board to be able to have a dialogue back and forth on. The first mentor I had in my life was my dad. And you know, we all have parents. I'm very proud of my dad, not for necessarily what he's done, although he's done some great things in his career, but more importantly, what he taught me. And early on, he put me to work. He was a general contractor, built houses, and started me kind of at the age of 7. I worked for my dad on and off throughout my growing years, including college. But the most important lessons I learned from him was about work and work ethic. And some specific examples, his comment was, everything comes to he who waits, so long as he who waits works like hell while he waits. And it was all about, you know, really understanding that the value we bring in the workforce is about, you know, thinking about what's important to our customer, not necessarily what's important to us as individuals. I think the other important lesson he taught me was about the work ethic. You know, when you work for your dad, sometimes you think, or you work for your parents, that they're going to make sure you're doing the right sorts of things, and he did, gave me all the right training. But the most important thing he did was he fired me 4 times. And you think, wow, Rick, you know, fired 4 times. You know, and here it was a real important lesson about what's important in the workforce. It's what's important to your customer, and my dad was my customer. Okay, and the jobs that I was doing, if I wasn't pulling the rope, doing the right sorts of things, you know, taking care of what's from a framing standpoint or a construction standpoint, or not, you know, performing, I was out of there. And it's kind of tough when you go home and says, hey, Mom, I got fired. Who fired you? Well, my dad did. So there's no sympathy there at all. So it's, you know, tough lessons for me growing up. And so when we think about this importance of what's going on in the workforce, there are no greater opportunities than what we find today in the workforce. There are also no greater challenges that we see in the workforce today. And let me give you a little bit of examples. I'll pull some information together. I think it's important to put it in perspective, and particularly for many of us who are IT literate and really have a good sense of how to use the systems that we have to be able to communicate. Some facts. There are about 38 million websites, you know, out in the World Wide Web today. Many of us probably use as many as we can of those 38 million. There are 7 million web pages created every day. Okay, and some of us are creating web pages. So you say, hey, great opportunity, 7 million, I can get part of that opportunity. There are 10 billion emails created every day. How many of you are working on trying to create at least 1 billion of those every day? Okay, I know lots of, particularly with the exchange that we have. So those are kind of on the high end. Let's talk about what else is going on in the globe. 60% of the world's population does not have access to phones. Okay, so you say, hey, there's a great opportunity. You know, new markets. But also it says where we are relative to the divide about opportunities out there. Half the population is 2 hours away from the nearest phone. 1/3 of the population of the globe never used a phone. Okay? Less than 20% of the world's populations have TVs. Okay? And another important factor, 95% of the world's wealth is held amongst 17% of the population. And you'd say, well, am I included in that 17% of the population? Yeah, all of us in this room are included in the 17% of the population. The reason I kind of put that on the table is it puts on the table a stark reality that there are tremendous economic opportunities out there. There are also some tremendous challenges for us as a workforce. Because the jobs that we're looking for are not going to be handed to us. The jobs that we're looking for, we've really got to work on, you know, to be able to pursue. Many of us are going to school to achieve technical degrees. I'm a math major, computer science major. You really got good technical background that has enabled me to do what I do. But what's allowed me to be able to rise through the organization is not the technical skills, it's the soft skills. It's the people, it's the interrelationship, it's understanding what's going on and being able to take that, combine it with the education that I have, and bring value to the marketplace. And that's really what I think we all have to think about. You all are going to a great school, getting a great background. And that technical background, those soft skills backgrounds you pick up, will serve you very well. But just because we go to college does not guarantee us a job. Going to college gives us the background and the capacity to go pursue opportunities, and it's the skills that we learn and understand about what's going on in life, in the global market, is what's critically important as we go forward. What I'd like to do is share with you a set of slides that I use an awful lot to talk to parents, people in the business community, students, to give some sense about what's going on in the global market and some of the challenges we face. Because I think this is all it's about, where we are as individuals, as leaders, as students, but more importantly, members of society and members of this important marketplace that we call the globe. And so what you see up here on the slide is the title, say, little e or big E, the birth to work pipeline. Because I contend that throughout our life, we are ready to move into the pipeline for work. From the time we're born to the time we show up at the workplace and all throughout the workplace is so critically important. Some of us are fresh and new in the workforce, meaning we're going to school now looking for jobs. Others of us have been in the workforce looking for new careers. Others of us are in the workforce and wanting to make sure we maintain the positions that we have. Others of us may be nearing the end of our career in the workforce and looking for other opportunities to come back, be mentors, come back, be teachers. And so hopefully, this presentation I'll walk through today will give you some sense and perspective about that and also fuel the dialogue for questions. Probably, there are a couple rules that I have about questions, and so, fuel your mind early on here. First is there are really no rules relative to questions. You can ask me any subject on anything that you would like, okay? And the second rule I have is if you don't ask me questions, I get to ask you questions. So think of those questions. You'll be ready to bubble them up. And if you may have a good question, whisper it to your friend and then elbow them and they'll stand up and ask the question. That way you don't have to ask the question. So let's kind of proceed. Let me talk about what's important for citizens of the 21st century, because ultimately this is what we're about. We live in a democracy. We live in an opportunity or land where we have about any opportunity that we want. And so we think about the workforce, whether it's a technical workforce, you want to study IT, you want to study medicine, or you want to be a teacher, okay? You want to be a psychologist. There are a set of skills that are really important to be successful in society, and this is what this chart's all about. First one, you got to have a skill set to be successful, meaning from economic self-sufficiency, which says got to be able to earn enough to be able to sustain your way of life. Second is you got to be an active participant in governance. So let's talk about that today. How many of you have taken the opportunity to vote today? Okay, and the rest of you, you're all going to vote today, right? Okay, that's what a democracy is all about. Okay, this should be the highest, I think the highest participation in election ever. And so a democracy only exists because we're willing to participate. And democracies cease to exist if we don't vote. So for those of you who have not had the opportunity to vote, please get out and vote today. I don't care who you vote for, just vote. Because it's about expressing your view, your idea. I mean, that's really important. And we're one of the few places we really get the opportunity to get out and vote. Third, and this talks about the soft skills, got to be an effective communicator. Orally, written, and the personal interactions one-on-one are so important. You're going to find, and for many of you who are looking for that first job, you may have a resume that talks about your technical skills. What's going to get you in the door and get you the job is how you're able to interact with those you're interviewing with. And so I will admit within the Boeing company, and all of the recruiters in Boeing report to me. I mean, we do global staffing, and so I think this next year, well, this year we're hiring 16,000 people. Next year about 17,000 people. Not all in the Seattle, Puget Sound area, many of them around the globe, but we have a lot of folks we're bringing into the workforce. And while the resumes are all about that technical side, what's on your resume, that gets you in the door. What gets you hired is to be able to articulate, communicate effectively with those you're interviewing with, because we want people